Welcome to the Real Estate Dads podcast. Here we are with Glenn Pantone, a seasoned real estate professional in the Las Vegas market who's got some very large projects that he is going to share with us, as well as his history in being a father, where he came from, how he got to have his experience, why he loves real estate. We hope to hear that. And, and just the experience he's got in regards to being an entrepreneur in the business. So Glenn, thanks so much for joining us.
Well, thank you, Max. You want me to take it away and just give you a quick background of myself?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Super. So I've been in real estate about 25 years now. I actually had my own company years ago when I was a single dad, and we'll get into more of that, I'm sure, as the show progresses. And I started doing it part-time in real estate, and it turned out to be full-time. I wanted to make a transition full-time. So I sold everything I had. I had a couple hundred thousand in stock, sold it all, started buying foreclosures. That led to going to real estate clubs and seminars and getting immersed into that. And I ended up becoming a full-time real estate investor. And I specialized in really dealing with investors. Most of the investors I dealt with actually were more or less wannabe investors. In other words, people that had good credit, they had good income, they had good jobs, and they had money, but they didn't have time to invest. So I led them around the country to several areas, one being Las Vegas, one being Albuquerque, one being Phoenix. We bought a lot of new construction houses back in 2003, 4, 5, 6, 7-ish, North Carolina. Wherever the new construction phase was, we were there, did extremely well. And then everybody knows what happened in 2008, when not only my net worth, went like this, everybody else's did too. But I found opportunity in foreclosures, and then I just rebranded myself and went from one thing to the next. Did extremely well in foreclosures over a period of several years, and the market in Vegas crashed from literally 300,000 to 100,000. It went down about 66%. And then we just started buying up properties, did extremely well, held on to several of those, sold several of those, did a lot of flips. I've done over 400 flips, mostly here in the Vegas market. Bought a ton of HOA foreclosures, which is a very special niche that most people don't know much about. We were buying homes at 10, 20 grand for a home.
Wow.
And then after time, we lost some of those. We sold some of those. We got clear title on some of those. So that worked out extremely well. And a lot of buy and holds. And I've transitioned now more into larger stuff, multifamily. Just last year, I bought a 24-unit motel, and I bought a 24-unit apartment building that's right close to the stratosphere in an area close to what's called the Arts District here in Las Vegas, which is being gentrified and turned around. And
I've been there.
So that's where I met, Trevor recently, as he's managing one of the motel. The cool thing about the motel is that we have short-term licensing as far as rentals go. So these guys are managing our 6 units of the motel. It's broken up into 3 buildings, and we're renovating one of them. They're going to manage it. Once we get that up and running, we'll renovate building 2 and building 3. And we're hoping that we can generate huge rental income from that. And then we'll be looking at another purchase probably in about 6 months once this one is stabilized. So that's roughly what I'm all about. So I'm in my early 60s now, but I'm still as active as I've ever been. Wealth of experience, wealth of knowledge, and I've got 4 boys, and 2 of them are in the business with me, and the other 2 aren't. But it is what it is, and that's what I'm doing.
Someone said once to me. They said, when you reach, your 60s, what they said was, those are your power years.
That is.
And I had to think about that, because the individual said it to me, because I was, I'm in my 40s, and was thinking about, just in regards to, where we are in our careers. And he goes, the older you get, you have more contacts, you have more money, you have more ability to put things together. You've got more confidence because you've got, this wealth of experience of ups and downs, and how to navigate a whole lot more. He goes, those are your power years to really knock the ball out of the park. And I couldn't agree more.
And it used to be that it was the 50s. And that's a great statement, but it was in the 50s. And now I think as people are getting older and they're moving in working longer in some cases, and I'm not working as I have to work. I'm working as I like to work. I love what I do. I'm reading a couple cool books as I'm aging. Of course, I want to live to be 120. And one of the books I'm reading is called The Blue Zones.
Is that really what you're going for?
Yeah, that's my goal. There's, have you heard of The Blue Zones yet, Max?
I haven't.
Good book. Check it out. The Blue Zones. And it's
the documentary on that.
Yeah, there's a Netflix documentary. I haven't seen that, but I'm reading the book and I'm almost done with it. But it talks about 5 or 6 areas of the world where people live a lot longer. One of them's in Italy. One of them's in Greece. One of them's Loma Linda, California. One of them.
I have heard of the Blue Zones.
Okinawa, and then one more, Costa Rica. So, and I've been to most of those areas too.
You know, what's interesting is I really want to die, not young, but I don't want to get old. I want to kick the bucket whenever my mobility has reached a point where it's no longer comfortable. And then I want to go quickly. And that's my goal, which I don't know how that really works.
Well, the book's cool.
You're going to plan your death.
Yeah, you'll learn a lot about it, because a lot of the reason these people live long is they have a purpose. And give an example. Look at Bear Bryant. When he died, what happened? Or excuse me, when he retired, what happened? He died. And if you've got a plan after, coaching college football or after real estate investing, you've got grandkids, you've got a purpose, you'll live as long as you want to live, as long as you're healthy.
Yeah, I don't ever plan on retiring. We've talked about that on this show a couple of times, but I don't ever plan on retiring. I plan on always staying busy, always staying useful, and always just continuing. I don't ever expect to have that ever stop. So wealth of experience for real estate. You've done a ton. You've got several different irons in the fire. I'm glad you're working with Trevor on some of the short-term hotel business. On a side note to this particular call, Trevor, thank you for the insight that you gave us on our Airbnbs that we've got. We're going to implement those changes, and we'll go into some of that stuff after this call. But I did want to, just mention that was a really valuable information you gave us. But Glenn, in regards to, your personal story, because we've got the real estate side, and, for a lot of us, we've got this kind of, I'll call it, experience in real estate. People are listening to the stories in real estate, and, people can definitely get a hold of you. We'll make sure they get your contact info at the end of this. But you started out with something very, very interesting. You were a single dad. Now you have 4 boys. So let's go into that. So how did that start? Did real estate tie into that on being an entrepreneur? You've got 2 of your sons that are still working with you now. Let's go into that background.
Well, I've got a very interesting story, more interesting than pretty much any stories you're ever going to hear. Trevor met my son a few minutes ago. He probably said, how the hell is he your son? He's very dark skinned. He's of Indian descent. His mother's from Trinidad. And when he was a year old, his mother and I had separated when he was a year old. And she said, oh, he's not yours. And I'm like, yeah, right. Cause I've been raising the kid. And so we did blood tests during the divorce, and it turned out that he wasn't my biological son. I didn't find out till he was 2 years old as we were going through the divorce. I ended up hiring an attorney in Southern Cal when I lived in the Valley. And he ended up winning the case for me. So I actually won the case. I won custody of him when he was 2 years old as a non-biological son. He lived with me. I continued to take him back to New York to visit his mother. He's got 2 half sisters that his mother was raising that I helped get in the country because they're from Trinidad originally. And I've been able to maintain the relationship with them and continue to make sure that he knew his other family. I didn't pull him away and say, you're with me. That's it. It turned out, funny story, that the bio dad that was fighting with the mom ended up losing. They lost the case. And of course they separated, and he was gone for 20 years. And then 20 years later, he wanted to be back in his son's life. And his son, my son, Tony, didn't want anything to do with him. And I said, dude, he's your biological father. You should meet him. He ended up meeting him. In fact, he's flying out today to go back and visit him in Georgia, where he's got 3 half brothers. And so now they've been able to tie together. And it's kind of cool that I've been able to keep the family pulled together. So it's kind of like when I was growing up, my family got divorced. I was 13 or so. Best thing in the world for me, because I look at every opportunity in life as what are the pluses, not the minuses. Well, I had 2 families. I had Christmas, Carol.
So Glenn, this is amazing. So you found out that you were raising a son. You found out he wasn't yours, which I can only imagine was a massive hit. I mean, really, it sounds like, as far as an emotional hit, probably the hardest that I think a man can ever take. You did a massively upstanding thing. You adopted him. I was,
what's the word? I was the legal parent, because I was the one that was there on the birth certificate. I was the one that raised him. I was the one that set child support when she moved to New York with him for a few months. So I was the legal father. And then once they decided who the legal father was, it was who's the better parent. And I won that. And so that's how even though I'm not biological, I was the legal
So you just
father.
retained parenthood rather than.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then you still, even after that, helped the mother work with her other half with her other children that she had back in
Right.
Trinidad, and worked with your son to still continue to have these relationships with these other family members who were really outside of you.
Correct.
So that's really amazing. That's really amazing. It's fantastic that you I'll say it like this, did the absolute most responsible thing you could to help another individual.
Right. And I'd say I wanted to do what's best for him. If it was best for him to be with his mother and his sisters, I would have let him go, and I would have paid child support, and it would have been fine and dandy. But I felt I did the right thing. He's now married, has 2 kids. So I've got 2 grandkids that are local. And it's a very good arrangement. Like I said, he still sees his other family. He's going to go see them this weekend. And that was the beginning of the story. So when he's about 4 years old, as a single dad for the next 2-3 years, I met my current wife, Evelyn, and she had a son that was about the same age, right about 4 years old. And so we ended up going to the park on our first date with our kids. They played, they hit it off, they got along well, and we ended up not marrying for about 6 years, but we had a son a few years after that, after we got together between us, and then we had another son after that. And so we've got our 2 sons separately together, and then we've got our 2 sons together, and we've got 4 boys, and it's a very good arrangement.
That's great. That's great.
So what you have one son, you each have one son outside of your marriage, and then
we have 2 together.
Man.
Right.
And which 2 are in real estate with you?
So Tony, the oldest one, is in real estate with me here. And then my oldest biological son, Vince, is 24. He just graduated, about a year and a half ago from UNR up in Reno, and moved back down after 4 years up there. And he's working with me in real estate also.
And what's the age between the oldest and the youngest?
Well, you got the 2 32-year-olds, Tony and Ed,
mm-hmm.
and then Vince is 24 and Giovanni's 20.
Wow. That is a story.
Yeah, it is an interesting story. But funny story that I like to tell, that when Tony and Ed were, 4 or 5 years old, Ed's mother's from El Salvador. She's very dark skinned. Ed's father is a Chinese doctor. So Ed looks Filipino. He's a little bit darker than a typical Filipino, but he's half Chinese and half El Salvadorian. And then Tony looks mostly Indian, and I'm a white guy, and Evelyn's a dark-skinned El Salvadorian. So people literally thought the kids were adopted, or when we were kids, we had a United Nations of children.
I was just going to, quite a colorful arrival when you get someplace.
When we had our 2, Vince is actually whiter than me, so he's very light-skinned, and Giovanni, the youngest, is darker than me, lighter than the mother. So we literally have 6 different shades of colors and different likes, but the 2 younger boys look more like me than the mother. But none of the kids that she's had, the 3 boys, look anything like her at all. They didn't really get her skin color or any of her features. So it's funny how it turned out.
And you said that your parents were divorced. They got divorced when you were 13. That gave you a positive outlook. You said, hey, you know what? I'm going to make opportunity out of anything. Was your father around after that split? Was there?
Yeah. In fact, it was funny what happened there. So the 3 older kids, we were like the Brady Bunch. So we had 6 kids. I was Peter Brady. And so we had 6 kids. The 3 older kids stayed with my father in Brockport, which is outside of Rochester, New York, because we were already in high school. So we graduated, lived with my father. And then the 3 younger kids lived with my mother in Greece, which is about 8 miles away, more of a residential or suburban area where we actually grew up as kids, and we moved out to Brockport. They grew up with my mother out there. And as I was saying, I could literally go between towns. So I'd be with this family for breakfast and that family for lunch, holidays, parties. I had 2 families. And the cool part of it was that my new stepmother had 2 sons. And then my old stepfather had 2 sons. So I had 4 more brothers that I didn't have before. So it's kind of cool to have, such a large family. So it really worked out well.
It's interesting about hearing the story because, as an outsider listening to this, it sounds like if I was to hear the story without hearing you say it or see it written down, I would hear a lot of conflict. I hear, a divorce from your individual parent, your personal parents, but that didn't seem to really phase you. It seemed like it just, you saw a lot of opportunity in it. You got some additional family members. You were able to get, another body. I don't know if I want to call it a support body, but, definitely a view of additional family members, after that event. And then with your your own kids, some trying things. I mean, finding out that your original son wasn't yours, but then having just such this view of opportunity attached to it where, you now in your 60s have fantastic, what it sounds like, fantastic relationships with all your kids. Was there any strife or conflict that kind of had to be overcome or worked through, kind of growing up through these things? Because it sounds like it would be a lot, but you have such a look of peace and just happiness regarding the entire, I'll call it, journey. So were there challenges?
No, actually, funny you say that, and I never even realized it till you said that. But you're right. I guess my attitude has always been one of optimism. I'll look at a situation, I look for the good in the situation, not the bad. And, in that, my first family after getting divorced, I looked at the good, not the bad. With my family, I looked at the good and the bad. With real estate, I look at the good with the bad. What's the opportunity? Hey, the market's crashing. Things are crashing all around us. Yeah, that's great. But what's the opportunity? And I've always been able to find the good, the opportunity, whether it's in people or whether it's in real estate or whether it's in family. I've always been able to find that. And it's always worked out well for me. So I'm, I guess, fortunate to be blessed with that.
That's fantastic. And on a personal basis, my parents did get divorced when I was very young. And, and hearing your outlook on it, I think is just absolutely fantastic, because for me, I think I always did view a lot of the difficulties and challenges associated with it. And those are things that I try not to identify with. But I would also, look back and kind of say, had my parents not split, this would have been different. This would have been different. I had a massive stuttering problem when I was a kid from stress as a result of my parents not being together. I mean, I couldn't speak until I was probably, fifth grade. I had a massive stuttering problem. You'd never know speaking to me now, but when I was a kid, it was bad. It was really, really bad. And, and some of those things were things that for me, with my family and my own kids is why I take, my family life so seriously and want to make sure that we stay away from some of these kind of things that can be so challenging. But I love the information from you in that, hey, these things occurred, but they didn't phase you. It sounds like you just said, hey, life's life. I'm going to keep finding the opportunity, the positivity, and just keep moving forward. And that's even on the family. I mean, you had some, let's move over to 08. So losses in the market. You had, and at that time, what were the ages of your kids in those years?
Well, let's see. Vince would have been about 5 and Giovanni 3. And then the other two boys were still, graduating from high school or in high school, late in high school.
And how was that during that period of time? And I had lost a lot of money during that period of time. I had made, decent money through my 20s. And then, I was 28 when the recession happened. I lost everything. I lost, a massive amount of GP allocations I had in real estate assets at the time. And, and I knew a lot of people who, personal friends who had, repo men, pulling back cars or taking the TVs off their walls, or recourse debt that was coming through. I knew of an individual who had, them, take his wife's engagement ring that he had written down on a personal financial statement, for those years in 08, you had 4 kids. You'd said, there were massive losses after doing well. How did that kind of affect, how did it affect everything?
Yeah, it's funny. I look back at money doesn't really, I mean, we all have stress of money if we've got bills to pay and whatnot, but and I just remember roughly the numbers, but it was worth maybe 2.5 million or so in 2008 or 2007. By 2010, I was worth nothing on paper. I went from 2.5 million to 0. And then 5 years later, it was worth 10 million. So it's just a matter of finding opportunity, jumping back, rebranding yourself. You've heard the story about millionaires that the first million is really hard to make, but the second million's easy, especially if you've lost it all because you've already done it once. So it can be done.
You have the experience.
You just rebrand yourself.
So you were just you feel like you weren't emotionally affected?
Yeah, I was no different than I was before. One day I'm worth 2.5 million. The next day the market crashed. I'm worth nothing. I was still earning more than I was spending. I lost, I think, maybe 3 properties. Honestly, I only lost 3 properties, a couple short sales and a foreclosure. One was a fourplex. And it was an interesting break on that one down in Phoenix. We bought, me and a couple other investors bought a group of fourplexes, 10 of them. And we renovated it. We're ready to sell it. We were ready to sell the whole package and double our money. And then the market crashed. The guy who had 8 of them ended up losing the whole thing. And some of these sold for like 30, 40 grand for a fourplex. So our $300,000 sales bought them for 150. We're going to sell them for $3. Crashed, couldn't do anything with it. Lost our renters and the whole market. So I ended up letting it go as a short sale, or foreclosure. I forget which one it was, but, it happens, but you just rebrand yourself and move on. One other thing I want to say is we've all heard the old expression about life is 10% of what happens to you, 90% how you react to it.
Really?
It's so true. So many people I sit around and talk to them like, oh man, but you don't know what I've been through. You don't know the problems I've had. Well, we've all had problems.
They're trapped by their past.
Yeah, you're trapped by your past. You have to literally just forget about the past and move on and look at the good or the opportunities in the future. And I've always had a very short memory. Just forget about the past. Don't worry about it. Don't let it bother you. Don't let it carry any weight with you. Move on and find what's next.
It's wisdom bombs you were out right now, Glenn.
Yeah. And it's good. I mean, you just got to be looking at whatever's next.
And was there any philosophical, and this came from a young age? Were there any books you read that, inspired this? Was there any catalyst you mentioned your parents' divorce. Was there anything else that, people who are listening are saying, hey, you know what, I want to adopt more of this. I keep using the term, the journey is the journey through life. There's no point in stressing out about the downtimes, but, to your point, how you respond to them, we're always moving forward. What's a way that people who are listening to this can adopt that kind of mindset of, kind of removing some of that stress and just recognizing you have to keep putting one foot in the other?
That's a great question because when I look back at, I guess I've always been, I'll give you a quick example. As a kid, I remember if I was mad at my mother, my brother, my father, something, you go to bed mad, but I was always wake up and I'm happy. And I would relieve that I was not mad at that person anymore and I would move on. So again, I was blessed with that ability. But the other thing, and you mentioned that, do I read? Do I listen to tapes and whatnot? Yeah. When I was a salesman in Southern California for about 15 years, the old traveling university, this cassette tapes. I used to buy all those cassette tapes. I've got literally 150 sets of cassette tapes at home. Dennis Waitley, Zig Ziglar, Jim Rome, any of these guys that Rohn, not Rohn.
Rohn, yeah.
Any of those guys that do self-help. Tony Robbins, all those guys. I've got all of their books and cassettes and I would listen to those things over and over and over and over. And so that stuff is just ingrained in me. I was cut out for it, I guess, in one regard, but the other regard by listening to that, after you listen to it so much, you just believe it. It's part of your lifestyle and it's hard for me to think in any other way. And I read a lot too. I'm kind of happy the football season's over because I'm not a big fan of basketball and hockey, although I'll watch like the Golden Knights and whatnot, but it gives me more time now to read. So I try to read an hour a day. I'm reading 3 books at a time on aging right now. So as I said, I'm starting to think of if I'm going to live to be 100 or 120, what do I need to do differently to get there? Because so many people just don't take care of themselves. But yeah, reading.
Yeah, so let's go into that. That's going to be a fascinating topic for people who are listening to this because I don't think it's something that we're going to have a lot of guests who are going to have what it sounds like some of your knowledge about this. So tell us about this, the aging, how to slow the aging. I'm sorry, you called them blue markets, blue bands, blue zones. So tell us more about this. I'm sure this is. I'm interested very much, and I'm sure we'll have other people who are as well.
Well, I read a book, and I forgot the title of it, but it's in my phone. I can pull it up later. But it was about aging. And basically she said, as you get older, as you know, you lose muscle mass, right? You don't work out anymore. People tend to gain weight. They don't eat as much. They don't eat as well, whatever it might be. But the first thing I said, hey, I'm working hard, but I want to change my priorities. So starting in the beginning of the year, I started getting up at 3 a.m. and going to the gym instead of working all day. And then you know how it goes. If you work a 10, 12 hour day, you don't have the energy, but physical or mental, to go to the gym. So I reversed it and started going to the gym in the morning. And at first I thought,
3 a.m.
Yeah, 3 a.m. Well, I usually get up at 3 or 4 a.m. anyways. And then I go to work, and usually I work from 4 a.m. till 8, which is when I get most of my work done before the day gets crazy. But I've tried a couple things that's interesting. One would be I'd work till about 11, and by 11, I'm kind of caught up and things are good. People go to lunch. I would go work out, go home, shower. My wife cooks lunch for me, come back to work. That works. But I was finding that sometimes if it's a busy day, I wouldn't get out of the office to go work out. So I said, if I get up and just go work out in the morning, that work. So I've worked out more than 50% of the time for the year. I've missed some days here and there, but at the most of the time I'm up 3 a.m. I go to work out. I go home, I shower. I'm at work at 5:30 in the morning. I still have my 2 hours to get caught up before the day gets busy. And then I can work till whatever, 2, 3, 4 o'clock, some days 5 o'clock. But I'm trying to cut down my work hours this year. So this is my first year of prioritizing my health over my work. I've always been prioritizing health first. It's always been family first, business second, health third. But now I'm looking at health first, family second, business third.
And what time do you go to bed?
Usually 8 o'clock.
Okay.
You gotta be, you're probably pretty sleepy by 8, huh?
Yeah, I'm pretty tired. I mean, I try to read, and this is the part, I try to read at night and I just can't do it because I'll read 3 or 4 pages and I'll fall asleep. But what's worked for me is I'll get up in the morning at 3 and I'll read for maybe 30 minutes or an hour in the morning. Then I'll go work out. Then I'll go home, shower, go to work. I might get to work at 6:30, but that works. I'm so mentally alert in the morning that I can read for an hour and I can knock out 30, 40, 50 pages and I get my hour of reading done in the morning rather than the night.
Can you listen to books on tape while you're working out, or audiobooks?
I probably could. I am not set up for that yet. I know most people I see in the gym have either earphones or iPods.
Yeah.
I guess I probably could start doing that because I've got the iPods.
I've been doing that, and it's like, it's just what you said, but when I'm not hitting 3 a.m. yet, I got 5 a.m. on lock. I can do 5 a.m. and then I'm at the gym working out. If I start my workout by 6 a.m. and more than half the time I'm listening to an audiobook. And then, so I get that, like, when I do sit down to work, now I'm like, my mind is right where it needs to be.
Right.
The only thing I've also come to find out is that it's really hard to listen to an audiobook on a really hard workout day, like leg day.
Right.
So like leg day, I don't listen, but on, chest day, which I can do chest like in my sleep because it's just fun. Who doesn't like bench press, right? I'll definitely be listening to an audiobook if I'm doing, back, buys, chest, stuff like that.
Good is one little thing. It's not a big thing, but I always take notes no matter what I do. I'm making notes now of subject points. I'm making notes about audiobooks because I haven't entered that into my protocol for working out. Good idea. So something I'll look at. I was thinking more when I'm on the treadmill or something because that's fairly easy.
Yeah.
With the weight part, I probably wouldn't do, but I think treadmill, good idea. I can get my news on there if I want. I can do audiobooks. I can do self-help. So good thought. So I love that idea.
Worth a shot.
That's a good one. Sometimes I like listening to audiobooks, and there's other times I like not having my phone with me at all because I find that my workout just gets done quicker if my phone's not with me. Because I find that I have a tendency to check emails. I might check social media, and if I don't take my phone with me, I get a significantly better workout in a more condensed period of time if I don't have my phone.
No, Max, you just it's also good training to not mess with your phone.
Yeah.
While you have it with you.
Yeah.
Or mess with the audio while we're on a podcast.
Yeah. It's our first time traveling to do it. So, we'll definitely get better, but I appreciate you guys bearing with my tech issues.